everybody. Awesome, you survived the impending apocalypse. Go you! You're surviving Kanye. That is a major crowning achievement of your career here. You should be totally proud of this. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Josh Newby. I'm representing chemistry and biochemistry. This is my second year here, so unfortunately I haven't got to really meet any of my colleagues here. And I gotta say that's a real shame for me because you're all gonna die a horrible death. This is so awful. I barely got to know you and now you're gone. I'm so sorry. But here I am tonight. I want to tell you a little bit why I think you want to have me around. Not just because of my awesome beard. Not just because of my awesome jacket. Not just because I have all the things that you want, but because you know, deep down, I can do a lot of good things for you. I'm a pragmatist. I completely go with this. I know what we will need in the future. And I can guarantee you, at certain points, you are going to say, yeah, I definitely want some chemistry around here. We'll get to that too in a minute. Let's start with my first point. Chemistry is downright cool, and anyone that tries to say otherwise is a downright dirty liar. Oh yeah, chemistry is the way to go. Because there is only one profession that I'm currently aware of that the professional dress does require a bow tie. There is only one here that I think also needs the other obligatory item, the pocket protector. How many of my students knew that I wore this, I wonder? Not many, I'm guessing, but I come prepared for tragedies that will come around here. I'm not the coolest of the chemists, though, I will admit that. There are some other good people on the list of chemists out there. I'm sure you are very familiar with some of the chemists. I could bring up names like Alfred Nobel. We just got done with Nobel Week. He was a chemist. Anybody know what he created? Dynamite. I hear it, dynamite. See, you guys are on the right track. And if we're trying to escape Kanye West, I think definitely we need to blow some stuff up. Just saying. You might need to look back in your rearview mirror and say, he's coming after us. How are we going to stop him here? So, Alfred Nobel is part of our lineage. We can also think about wonderful characters like Marie Curie, Madame Curie. Wonderful name in science. Did a lot of great for nuclear science, chemistry, thinking about radioactivity. If we're going on a long-term trip, how are we powering this thing? What is our fuel supply like? I want someone like Madame Curie hanging out here to be able to tell me, how do we get this ship to go? Where is our power coming from? Other people that I like to think of as very cool that are chemists. Rosalind Franklin. How many people know Rosalind Franklin? You should all know Rosalind Franklin. Screw Watson and Crick. That's what I say. Yeah, thank you. Having someone like that on our list is someone that we want to know. So if you don't know who Rosalind Franklin is, that is really who discovered the structure of DNA, and other people stole the work there. That's not our issue, though. But you should definitely know who that is. Other people that you might recognize, I know I'm going through some really old generations of people. Another favorite on my list is Heisenberg. There's a couple ways you can take that. Feel free to go whatever way you want to. Because Heisenberg is the person that gets things done. And you know that. We all know what Heisenberg does. So therefore, I think that is a good section of my community that we are representing here. All the people that can tell us how to survive out there when we're out on the spaceship, rocketing away to our new home. But when we get to our new home, we definitely need some things when we get there. We need to be thinking about how do we survive on the ship. I want to be drinking while I'm there. Take that how you want. I want some clean water was what I was thinking of. But, hey, whenever, each has his own cocktail. So I want to be able to know that my water is quite clean when it's coming out of the tap. And if we're recycling everyone's bodily waste, I think you do too. So, having me around is going to be a very useful thing to you. So these are the types of things that I'm going to be wanting here, and thinking about other things that I want. I can think about all the great things that I can make for you. Because let's think about it. Most of us are college students here. Most of you. Most of you like to have a little bit of fun, and you like to know how things are done. I'm going to tell you, I can make alcohol. That is not a lot. We are very good with fermentation science. We are very good at distillation science. we know how to do these things because I think we all recognize alcohol is an important quantity on a long trip. What are you going to do without a way of sterilizing things? Seriously, what are you going to do? I think this is a great thing that we could also be thinking about for cleaning our garments. Every now and then you get a stain on it, you want to be able to take it out. But I think also some people recognize that every now and then you might use this for recreational purposes. And, you know, if that's something you're into, you might want to keep me around for that because I've been told I brew a good batch. My last vanilla raspberry porter went over very well. Tasted like ice cream. Awesome. That's not the only thing that I can do for you. I can think about things like, drugs, because eventually things are going to happen where we're going to start to get sick. We're going to have people around. I mean, you can hear some of my students are like, man, what's up with Newbie's voice today? He sounds really weird. Yeah, I've got a cold going on. But thank God we have somebody that can make Sudafed for me. Hooray, I can still be up here talking. Did I hear a clap for 1 minute?
Yeah,
oh.
There's our 0 minutes now.
0 minutes. Don't forget, I can also make drugs, however you want to think about that, whether that be birth control or antibiotics. I can make them. I make synthetic products, including plastic and rubbers, whatever types of things you want to do with those types of information. Go for it, because I'm here to help you out.
Thank you, Professor Newby. So I invite Professor Hess from Writing and Rhetoric to continue the debate.
There's no way I can compete with that. All right. I'm going to tell you a story. First year seminar 103 students, please analyze away. Once upon a time, 2.5 million years ago, 100,000 years ago, give or take a week, humans developed spoken language systems. A millennia or 50 later, we're not really sure, they developed written language systems. 8,000 or so years ago, grammar, rapidly followed by grammar errors and the invention of red ink. Remember the red ink. Next came the printing press, the typewriter, radio, TV, personal computers, email, Facebook, texting, Twitter, and emojis. And here comes the next good thing that all stories need, a complication.
Dun, dun, dun.
We have Twitter and radio and email and smartphones and spoken language and written language, and none of it works perfectly. In fact, communication is so complicated that we have many, many, many different kinds of language experts out there. Lawyers and editors and judges and therapists and priests and rabbis and Professor Lee and Professor Carson and me, or anybody like me in the discipline called Writing and Rhetoric, or out in the bigger world it's called Rhetoric and Composition, by the way. Definitions coming up, listen. Rhetoric is the art of spoken language. Composition is the art of written language. That's what I am, rhetoric and composition. And what we really do is this. We help others use language to create, to question, to teach. Create what? Clear thought, beautiful stories, effective communication. To question the authority that others try to create using language. To teach knowledge, any knowledge, anything humans need to pass along to one another. To create, to question, to teach. In any sphere of human existence. Anything. Law, love, life sciences. In my field, we turn our hands to using language anywhere for any purpose. Because as complicated and as complex as language is, it's what we got. Do you doubt me? Well, heads up, people who are filling the spaceship that's leaving Earth. You see these folks in front of me here? I can't claim that every one of them has asked me for help.
man.
But every one of their departments has teaching help, workshop help, curriculum help. It's all communication. It's all about using language. They can't get by without it, and every one of them ends up in my office at some point. But I was telling you a story, remember? A couple of million years ago, spoken language. Thousands of years ago, written language. And no matter what technological breakthroughs we invent, humans are still struggling to communicate. You just think about it. You had a problem with that today, didn't you? Where are we in this story now? Well, we've passed the story's crisis. I can't tell you what caused it. Maybe it was Kanye, maybe it was an asteroid, maybe it was two governments failing to communicate. Maybe it was failure to communicate about global warming. I don't know. But I do know that we've reached the story's climax. Humanity is boarding the spaceship and leaving Earth. How's the story going to end? How's it going to end? That's for you to decide. I hope that you're going to give humanity its best chance for survival by choosing somebody whose work... Wait a minute. Remember that red ink? Remember the red ink? That is so not what I do. I hope you're going to give humanity its best chance for survival by choosing somebody whose experience cuts across everything that humans do, who knows how to help you use language that is efficient and precise and beautiful. Somebody to help you read and interpret and explain the medicine and chemistry and law and English and environmental science and philosophy and biology books you bring with you, and can help you turn around and write a really accurate recipe for stir-fried alien. And to explain that when the chemist says state functions, he's talking about molecules. And when the philosopher says functions of the state, he's talking about government. And to help you remember that language offers you beauty and poetry and passion, too. Somebody who can help you use language to create, to question, and to teach. Because actually, it's not about you. It's about saving humanity, right? Which means you're going to need somebody to help you teach your children. And somebody to tell the story about how you ended up in the spaceship.
Thank Professor Hess and invite Professor McGee from Environmental Studies.
Let's see who I'm getting on this ship with. Get my ship together. Okay, so I was deciding whether I'm Darren McGee in Environmental Studies, Chair of Asian Studies as well, and 我开始想到做这个实验的时候，我不知道要说中文还是要说英文，或者是要说法语还是意大利语。I didn't know whether to speak Chinese or English. I'm going to speak English. So I'm going to stick with it. Yeah, and I thought, okay, well, I'll write a song about environmental studies, and those of you who know me a little bit know that I play banjo, and if I'd been really bold, I would have brought the banjo and I would have tried to sing, but that would have taken more than 3 minutes of practice time. So here's what I got so far for the song that happened on the way from my car to here. And those of you who know that I'm in environmental studies and where I live may question why I drove here. Right? That's because I was late and I was feeding my kids. And Professor Brown suggested if I brought my kids, I would have had an advantage because I had 3 kids who could have voted. I'm sorry, I digress. 2015, we took a little trip with a pack of college students as the earth became a lip. They had to make a call about which discipline to take, and I'm here to tell you how they made a big mistake. Well, they first took a poet, but the poet left his pencil. Without a writing implement, he couldn't write a rhyme. Then they took a chemist, but the chemist left his hood. And chemistry without a hood just isn't any
Good.
Pretty good, huh, for the car? Bio and philosophers were also in the game. And here's where I sort of ran out of time. So, how's it going? So why? I'm going to argue in my remaining 12 minutes that the reason for having, maybe not me, but somebody in the environmental studies field with you on this rusty little spaceship, that I think I'd vote for the horse rather than the spaceship. The first one is poop. The first reason is poop. And what do I mean when I say poop? There are, I don't know, 100 of us in here, and chances are, on the journey, some of us will poop. And we will have waste to, it's true, you two, you may look at me, but it's true. We will have waste to deal with. In environmental studies, one of the most important aspects from my work in environmental studies is how do we deal with that waste? How do we deal with the waste of industrial society, the plastic and stuff the chemists are going to create, and that we've loaded our planet with right now? How do we deal with wasted red ink, which Professor Hess doesn't create? How do we deal with the waste from our bodies, right? And it's my chemistry colleague, esteemed chemistry colleague, who sadly will be left behind here cleaning the rust off that horse, suggested that we have to have clean drinking water. Absolutely true. We've got to keep our drinking water and our wastewater separate, and environmental studies has a long tradition of careful and thoughtful work about recycling water and being very efficient with water, and keeping waste from our water. The second thing I'm going to argue that environmental studies brings, aside from fabulous songwriting and knowledge about poop, is knowledge about energy. And I would guess that instead of Kanye or instead of Donald Trump being the reason that this planet fell apart, it was likely a result of how we use energy and how we misused energy and how we've spent the last couple of hundred years burning dead dinosaurs and the results of lots of old stored sunlight, and releasing all that heat into our planet's environment in a period of a few decades. And I would argue that environmental studies comes especially prepared to help us avoid those kinds of mistakes on planet Zarfblad. Environmental studies also brings, from the humanistic perspective, a very careful attention to questions of justice and environmental justice. Where are we going to put the poop in the spaceship? Where are we going to put it once we land on our new? Where are we going to put it once we land on our new planet? Are we going to put it where the weakest and the least powerful of our group tend to choose to live in on the planet? Or are we going to find an equitable solution where we can minimize the unjust impacts and the burdens that any one portion of our group might have to shoulder? It's kind of depressing. Environmental studies. The more I talk, the more I think maybe I should be left behind. Clean up the mess that we've probably created. What else? Environmental studies brings a lot of knowledge about climate change, even though most of America seems to not want to listen to it. Hopefully, you people, I wanted more applause than that. Hopefully you guys will not be like the rest of Donald Trump's never mind, sorry. And then finally, okay, so I'm also a home brewer. I'm a pretty mean home brewer. I don't usually put raspberries in my beer. And I know that there are 3 home brewers here, at least 3 home brewers, and one who's married to a home brewer. So again, another reason maybe for us to stay back. And I will conclude with one final point about toxicity and health, human health, right? Environmental studies is closely bound up with questions of health. Short-term health, sort of immediate impacts of drinking dirty water and having the runs for a long time and feeling really upset, or long-term impacts about toxicity related to things like plastics that chemists make. And so I would bring with me that tradition of attention and care about impact of environmental toxins. Thank you. See you there.
All right. Thank you, Professor McGee, and I invite Professor Lee from the philosophy department.
Thank you all for coming. You've heard a lot of amusing irrelevancies.
Whoa!
I'm explaining to you
This is an amusing
where the
relevancy.
truth lies. I believe that when you understand the relation that philosophy has to human knowledge, you will see that it should be a philosopher that you include on the life raft. First of all, ask yourself, what is your purpose in bringing with you on the life raft an academic? Food. It can only be to help you recreate the theoretical knowledge that has been achieved by humans on Earth. Now, all of my colleagues here speak very well of the importance of the knowledge that has been developed by their disciplines. So it seems like it would be a very hard choice for you to make. Indeed, it seems like you face a dilemma. It seems that whichever one of us you choose, you will leave out the knowledge of the others. How could you decide but by flipping a coin? But here is where the distinctiveness of philosophy provides you a way out of the dilemma and a clear reason to choose a philosopher. Philosophy has long been known as the queen of the sciences. The reason is that originally, at its dawn in ancient Greece, it encompassed all of human knowledge. Other disciplines are of more recent vintage, and they came into being by breaking away from philosophy, the true parent of them all. The other disciplines are offshoots of philosophy. The great philosopher Aristotle, for example, wrote works on all the major areas of human knowledge. To take one instance, he wrote on biology, and he asked his student, Alexander the Great, to send him back biological specimens from his military forays into Asia. Less than 400 years ago, physics was only beginning to break away from philosophy. The great Isaac Newton, for example, regarded himself as working in the field of natural philosophy, not physics. Biology and chemistry broke away later, and environmental studies much later than that. But very much of a newcomer.
We're that good.
We're that good. A well-known book on the history of economic thought is entitled The Worldly Philosophers. Only in the 19th century did the social sciences become independent of their parent, and psychology broke away even later. Foster Boswell, who was on the faculty of HWS at the turn of the 20th century, taught psychology as well as philosophy. And philosophy, like any good parent, still looks after its children. There are many subfields of philosophy that concern themselves with the activities of the children. There are, for example, the philosophy of biology, philosophy of the environment, philosophy of science, philosophy of law, and many others. Philosophical study of rhetoric, originated by Aristotle, oversees the study of writing. The philosophical study of beauty, or aesthetics, oversees the study of literature. But you'll never find, for example, as an area of study, the biology of philosophy or the chemistry of philosophy. So here's the point. With a philosopher with you in your brave new world, you can in time recreate all the human knowledge from its origin point. Take any of my children with you, and what you have will be only a part. I love my children, but in this case, they must give way to the parents. Moral law, and what it means to be conscious of our own self and aware of our own death. Philosophy considers in all its aspects the meaning of life. Philosophy is a systematic study of wisdom, a path on which it was set by the patron saint of philosophy, who is
So great.
Socrates. Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." So if all of you want to have a life worth living, you must examine your own life, and therefore you must take a philosopher with you to help you in dialogue to achieve that end. And Socrates was the one who drank the hemlock rather than stopping, as was demanded of him, talking truth to power in ancient Athens. This is something which you must want to have in your new world. Thank you very much.
I invite Professor Brown from the biology department.
Good evening. You have gathered an impressive group of faculty before you this evening. They all represent good choices. But before you tonight, you must make the best choice, the only choice, the right choice. And that choice is the very person that has in her job title the study of life. You must take a biologist. Biologist's very craft is to study survival, how and why living things exist. That's your goal. You should take a biologist. So let's think for a moment about the things that you will require to survive. Someone name one for me.
Water.
Water. Perfect. I have a PhD in water. You probably should take an expert in fresh water. It's more than the chemistry of water that we need to understand. Water in our body is important to protect our brain, lubricate our joints, get rid of waste. These are things that essentially you need a biologist with you to do. Something else we're going to need. Food. Food is about biology. Our entire agriculture system is based on biology. So you need a biologist to teach you how to foster the seeds that you take along with you, how to nourish the people that are along on your voyage. Given the parameters of this science fiction debate would include something like Mars, I don't think it's any small claim to talk about the first Martian. Mark Watney, a.k.a. Matt Damon. What was he? A biologist. So if you haven't read the book or seen the movie, cover your ears and eyes. This is your warning. He survives. Okay, this brings me to another point. Medicine, already brought up this evening. It's no good to bring along medicines or be able to manufacture medicines. We need to know how they apply to the human condition. So it takes a biologist to do that job. Think of the number of times that you have used biology. Since your birth, since you were implored to wash your hands, your use of antibiotics, vaccinations, medicines, those are biological contributions. Okay, I could go on for a while. We could talk about shelter, we could talk about gas balance, but we need to talk about the most important aspect of biology, sex. No one has mentioned it yet, okay? It's imperative to our survival. Now, you may all think you are experts in sex. You may know how to do it. You may know how to control its intended outcome. But better to take an expert, someone, again, that in her PhD has that word, who knows how to employ it beyond just the human condition. What about bacteria? What about plants? Our food source will require us knowing about plant sex, not just about human sex. So, take a biologist with you. Now, there are heaps of reasons to bring a biologist beyond these critical areas for our survival. And I think they're important to mention. The first is that biology is inherently collaborative. This has two facets. The first is that biologists understand many ways of knowing. We need to write. We need to apply philosophical ideas to our areas of study. We need to be good at chemistry, at physics, at math. We are historians of the environment. Why wouldn't you take one mind that applies all of those different disciplines and can make them come to fruition on your voyage? The second facet of biologists being collaborative is that we are good team members. I also want to stress the fact that we are all on this ship together. It isn't just my knowledge that's going to be important. And in fact, if you look at all biological discoveries, there is a team of people behind those ideas. So take a team member with you, someone that can demonstrate more than the individual pieces, but really the emergent properties that happen when you apply multiple ways of thinking. My third point is that biologists are systematic thinkers. We use plans and standard methods to work on complex and very messy things. Probably a good idea to take someone along that's used to things going wrong and problem solving about them. This will be key to our success on the voyage and once we get to our new planet. Now, there's lots of examples of this from our past here on Earth. Things that have threatened us, like diseases, agricultural collapse, the importance of sleep, water shortages, solutions to waste, how to prevent extinction, developing organ transplants, personalized medicines. These are all areas where biologists have been the founding knowledge. So my colleagues may try to convince you with things like alcohol, poop. Those are all biology at their base. There would be no biology without it. There would be no remediation of poop without biology. So none of these developments came easy, right? So it's best to take someone that understands how to work well in them, how to be good in stressful situations, and how to work harder when things go wrong. Okay, last but not least, biology makes the world a better place. Think of all the things that you love, and I'm not just talking about sex. We have to move beyond that. I'm talking about things like a good meal, a warm cup of coffee, a bouquet of flowers, watching whales. Those are all inherently biological concepts. Okay? We want to take those along. We want them to be, in fact, part of the voyage that we are creating. So in summary, by taking a biologist, you gain the very expertise that your life depends on. We've named this the Life Raft. Why wouldn't you take someone that studies life? My area hits on all of the hallmarks that you will need to survive. Things like water, reproduction, medicine, gas exchange. I could go on. Further, you gain a team member, and I think that will be essential in our survival.
There you go.
I've changed my mind 5 times. Sorry, Rob Carson in English. Changed my mind 5 times already about where I was going to go. So I want to start off by thanking my colleagues for making such inspiring cases. I kind of wish I could go back in time and major in everything, which is cool because being an English major is pretty much that. To be an English major, you have to have the kind of temperament that wants to major in every single thing. And in fact, to get a PhD in English, they make you do that. So one of the reasons, although Professor Brown, whom I adore, claimed that as she tried to fight for one seat on this, that she was a good team player because she was good and collaborative. You need a team to do biology, as she said, arguing for one spot.
This is my team.
Oh yeah, sorry. I guess she'll train you all. Anyway, as this goes though, English is an interesting thing. Many of you probably, I'm going to be like. I know from talking to Professor McGee earlier that there's sometimes a perception that doing an English degree is about reading poetry and stories and stuff like that. But we moved way beyond that like 50 years ago. You know, there still is at the core a basic premise that what we do is read Shakespeare and Dickinson, Thoreau, and cool people like this. And hard text, the hardest text we can get our hands on. We train our brains on these texts, dealing with the toughest language we can find. Developing skills, close reading skills and critical thinking skills that are absolutely essential to making our way in the world. A while ago, 50 years ago, long before I was born, long before any of you were born, we figured out that there wasn't a clear line between literary texts and non-literary texts. That basically everything out there was a text, right? If you're reading a recipe, if you're reading a newspaper editorial, if you're listening to a political speech, if you're watching a television commercial, if you are watching a parade, if you're watching a fashion show, if you're watching a wrestling match, if you're watching the Blue Jays lose tragically, anything that you're seeing is a text where a series of human intentions came together to produce meaning in a text and where we as an audience decode meaning from it. And everything that is around us involves meaning being encoded and decoded. Whether you're doing chemistry, which is taught in books, through language, biology, which is taught in books through language, through words, when these things are presented to us, as Professor has said, and I think we're kind of on the same boat here, so basically, we recognize that reality has a fabric of language surrounding it. It immerses us, like the Force. I feel so much like Yoda right now. Luminous beings, are we not this crude matter? Right? You know, and so then as we go on, recognizing that the skill of being able to somehow extract meaning and to recognize not only that language surrounds us and shapes us, but that it is inexorable. That whatever it does, it changes what it presents to us. So that when we are told by people that climate change isn't happening, they're telling us this in language. And when we're told by other people that it is happening, that's happening in language. And how are we going to tell about this? Through close reading skills and critical thinking skills. Where do you learn close reading skills and critical thinking skills? Once upon a time, 400 years ago, back when philosophy was apparent to us all, before we all broke away from it. And I say this as someone who, in fact, personally broke away from a philosophy department. I was doing graduate work in philosophy until I finally said, these are the worst parties I have ever been to. I had so much more fun when I was in English. I met such smarter people. And so I decided, until I came here. But I left philosophy for a reason, which was that philosophy was still, I think, clinging to some things from a bygone era. Right now, where the same sort of multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, conversational, so-called biological conversations that take place are happening in English. This is where, right now, I still have time, right? Okay, so because we take texts that come from places and then we find meaning in them. English or literary studies, cultural studies is always about three things. We are thinking about the people that generated a text, what they meant by it. We are looking at the text itself and seeing what's in there, and then we are making meaning from it. When we try to figure out what people put into a text, we have to project into other places. So if we are looking at old texts, we have to learn history. If we're looking at texts from other parts of the world, we have to learn anthropology and geography. In order to understand where other people come from, we have to use an act of the creative imagination where we put ourselves into someone else's shoes, which is fundamentally an ethical and moral act. But it requires us to be in deep dialogue with historians and anthropologists. When we study a text itself, we're doing rhetoric or composition. As we look at how things fit together, we are dissecting how meaning takes place and learning about metaphor, learning about metonymy, learning about synecdoche, learning about lots of words that you guys probably don't use, but you should because they're important. And then when we come to unpack what meaning means to us, we have to turn to the things that are happening in the academy currently. When we're interested in goals 6, 7, and 8, which is what we do really, when we talk about race, class, gender, sexuality, and ethnicity in texts, what we are doing is finding out why these things actually matter to us now. And the reason that they matter to us now is that they engage with the most important problems that are going on. But we can't talk about these problems in Hamlet or these problems in A Rose for Emily unless we are actually aware of what's going on in the present. So we have to be up to date on psychology, on economics, on sociology. In fact, in the book that I'm writing right now, I have a literary theory chapter at the beginning, but then I've got a chapter on psychology, then I've got a chapter on political theory, then I've got a chapter on economics, and then I've got a chapter as a rule. But really, in terms of the important stuff, content. We are people that study the best things that culture has produced, whether these are novels, plays, poems, stories, whether they're movies, whether they're dances, whether they're paintings, whether they're operas. We look at the pinnacle of cultural production and the greatest loss. We'll discover biology again. It's still going to be there. We'll discover science, chemistry again. It's still going to be there. But this is what we're going to lose when we leave Earth. We need to bring our artistic and cultural legacy. And that is what we are most trained at doing, is looking at that stuff. In terms of the content, in terms of the skills that we develop from this, though, are close reading and critical thinking, which you can't learn anywhere better than when you're doing literary studies. Thank you very much.